Welcome to all of you latke lovers. Actually, I don't know anyone who does not love potato latkes. So
Right.
I'm so happy to be doing this. The thing about making potato latkes is you cannot go wrong, almost no matter how you make them. Some people like them thin and crispy. And some people like them, a little thicker and paler. Um, I'm in the crispy camp. But they're always good. It's like frying potatoes. You can't fry potatoes in a bad way. They're all going to be delicious. Um, there are many methods, of course, to making potato latkes. As we were just saying, you could do white potatoes, you can do sweet potatoes, and I just learned pumpkin. And as I was preparing to kind of get this Zoom demonstration going, I happened to see that, as I mentioned a minute ago, that Noah from Noah's Restaurant in Greenport was doing a Zoom demonstration with his mom as sous chef. And so I watched it. I thought, well, I maybe can pick up some tips. So I watched it on Tuesday, and he's a wonderful chef, and did a beautiful job. And what he did was he parboiled his potatoes, but only part way, so that they were still hard in the center and soft on the outside. And he hand grated them and squeezed out the liquid. And then he grated his onions by hand and cried a little bit. And then put in his egg and flour and everything. And they turned out beautifully. I mean, they looked wonderful. And he did one batch of russet potatoes and one batch of sweet potatoes, as we mentioned, and one of pumpkin. And so it looked great. And was I intimidated after watching that? Yeah, I was. And the very next day, on Wednesday of last week, you might have seen it, there on the front page of the food section of the Times, Joe Nathan, the very well-known, highly respected cookbook author, has her recipe for potato latkes. And it was one that she picked up, I believe, in Europe. It was also, she partially cooked the potatoes, but she baked them halfway. So they also were soft on the outside, hard on the inside. And she did the hand grating, but she didn't add anything else to it. No onion, no egg, no flour. And I'm sure they're absolutely wonderful. So it just kind of proves there are so many ways you can make potato latkes. Those were two that I was impressed with. The recipe that I use, I got from my very dear friend, Iris, who's now living in Chicago, who may be in on our Zoom meeting, I'm not sure. She was going to try to make it. And I've been making this recipe for years, and I find it easy and fast. I don't get scraped knuckles, no more grating on the box grater. And I think they've always turned out. So with that, we'll start. If anyone was doing it along with me and you have questions, just stop me and ask. And for those of you who are watching, hopefully take a couple of notes, or I'm sure it will stick with you.
Ellen, I do have a question. So grating versus food processor. I've always heard, I see your food processor. I've always heard food processor is a big no-no. What's your opinion?
Not in my family. I make them this way. My daughter makes them this way. I don't even put a grating attachment on. I use my regular chopper.
Oh.
And you'll see. Give it a try. We'll see how
Ellen, you should hear me. I am here. I'm in here in voice. It's Iris.
Oh, Iris from Chicago. Wonderful. So happy to be here.
Yeah, I made a batch last night and I brought some to my neighbors and they thought they were fabulous.
There we go.
Can I answer the last question about using the processor?
Sure.
I think you have to be careful. So you need to pulse and look how fine it is. That's really the difference between a box grater and using a food processor. If you just turn it on and let it run, it'll become mush.
Right, right. If, however, you use the grater attachment
Mhm.
on your food processor, I think then you don't get that mushiness.
Hmm.
That's true.
But
But
then,
I do like you do. I use the knife.
so here we go. I peeled the potatoes, 5 russet potatoes. Actually, I have to say, these are Idaho. I looked for russet, couldn't find any because russet is Long Island and Idaho is Idaho. Just a little aside, the first year I moved out here and I stopped off at Tecluid, up on the North Road, and they have wonderful potatoes. And I walked in and I said, I'd like some Idaho potatoes. And they looked at me like I was from Mars. I didn't know anything about Long Island russets. Anyway, they're really the same. So I'm going to take these potatoes out that have been soaking in cold water and drain them really well, or squeeze the water out as best I can, because we're trying to
Big her potato.
dry.
Oh, they're pretty big.
Okay, so I'm using 5 large baking potatoes.
I was gonna use.
If I didn't put them in cold water, they would turn color, oxidize, and turn color. As we all know when we've done potatoes in advance. We're going to be doing this in 4 batches. So we're going to put chunks of potato, little chunk of onion, 1 egg.
It with a box grater.
So I'm going to cut the potatoes in chunks.
Looks like a nice kitchen.
I've been there.
If I had 6 people, 8 people, there would be enough. Take a handful, like a quarter of what I've got here. Put them in. 1 more. I've already cut up
Put them in a food processor,
medium onion
which I'm not using.
and 1
I'm using
small
my-
onion. So I'm just going to put some
I
pieces.
like it better.
I'm going to do 1 egg at a time. So in case there's any shell, they're not going in there. Okay. 1 egg.
I didn't understand what she just said about doing
Hey.
it.
If you break the egg in the shell, problem.
Okay, we're ready? Going to pulse. Just put it, as Iris said, we put it on pulse. Don't put it on because it might chop them up too
What?
much. So. We want them chunky, but not too chunky. A few more. Good. Iris, how's that?
I think it looks good, but it's hard to know on the screen. I'm sure you know. I'm sure you.
Pulse it. She forgot.
Started.
Why didn't you turn on
I'm also going to turn on the oven on low because when they're all done, as they're frying, I'm going to slip them into the oven to keep them warm. So I have a pan with a rack in the oven, and as they get done, that's where they're going to go.
Let you turn on the wrong burner.
I'll be right back.
Wrong burner on the left.
I'll be right back.
Thank you.
Ellen, do you use vegetable oil or canola oil? Do you have a preference?
I would say any vegetable oil, any neutral vegetable oil.
Neutral. Mhm.
I use grapeseed
Great.
or canola or avocado.
Oh, really? Oh.
That's what I use, avocado,
Mm-hmm.
and it comes out good.
Does it add flavor, the avocado oil?
No, it's very neutral. So we've got our 4th batch. Okay, this. Now we have our bowl. Nice potatoes, onions, and egg. I'll take a half a cup of matzo meal. Some people use flour, and that's fine. I like matzo meal.
Okay, so what are you doing? With the 4 batches, what are you adding?
I'm adding matzo meal.
Okay, and same measure on flour?
Half a cup of flour or half a cup of matzo meal, either one. But I don't put it in all at once, you know, I kind of mixing it just to make sure it's not too much. Actually, I think it's gonna need most of it. I just want to get it, this is just gonna bind it. Yeah, I think the half a cup is fine. And barely a quarter cup of oil. Again, the neutral oil. I'm using grapeseed. Grapeseed.
How much oil?
Quarter of a cup. But you know what? I'm thinking a little less. I'm thinking 1/8 of a cup. And then
1/8?
And then I'll decide. Okay, salt. Iris said 1.5 teaspoons
Said a teaspoon and a half?
of kosher salt, and 1 teaspoon of baking powder. Sorry, I didn't put it on the recipe. Totally.
Do we have baking powder? Baking powder.
I don't think it's essential, actually, but Iris said, and I listen to Iris when it comes to cooking. We mix it. Looks good. You know, sort of like that.
Excellent. Ellen, do you remember how many potatoes you started with?
I did 5 large.
5 large. Okay.
Either 1 large onion, 2 medium onions, 1 medium onion. That's choice. Your choice. Okay. So the way we tell, and you probably all know this, the way we know that the oil is hot enough, you just like drop a little piece of the potato in, see if it sizzles. I have non-stick pans. One belongs to my granddaughter Casey, who came to the rescue because I only had 1 large and she had 1, so she lent it to me. And I would say the oil, what I do is I add the oil as I'm cooking. So I'm starting with a good coating of oil in the pan. Maybe, I don't know, measuring up a little bit. Not just on the surface, just a little bit more. And I'm going to just put in a little piece of potato and see what happens. Sizzle. Not sizzling enough. Warm that up a little more.
You
How
can it
long
on
do-
high
How
or
long do you cook them?
I have my heat at about, I would say medium,
medium?
and then I will adjust it as we're cooking. You know, it depends on your stove, on your pan.
Mhm.
So you kind of have to use your judgment on this.
Does it make a difference between non-stick and regular?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
It doesn't. I think if you keep enough oil in your pan, they shouldn't stick.
Okay.
In a regular pan that's not non-stick, it requires a bit more oil though. So I actually like it in non-stick better.
Yeah. Why is that, Sue?
It doesn't, you don't need the same amount of oil.
All right. Okay, I'm going to start. I'm going to try to not have my spoonful have a lot of liquid in it. So I'm going to take a spoonful and kind of press a little of the liquid out. I like them irregularly shaped and small. So I'm putting like a tablespoon's worth right in the oil. And just when they start to brown on the edges, I'm going to look underneath. That's sort of the clue. Edges will be brown and then you'll flip them. Probably, 2-3 minutes.
Ellen, do you ever use white pepper?
Could.
That's what I usually use, a little white pepper, not the black because it doesn't look that good.
I think that's a nice idea, a nice touch.
Mm.
All frying nicely. Getting some dark edges, I see. I don't know, maybe I'll put this down a little bit more.
Perfect.
Ellen, I'm getting in the car and driving over.
Okay, give me about a half hour. I'll have all for you. I'm actually smelling them.
They smell so good.
Yeah.
They're making me hungry.
I'm
Much
gonna
onion?
raise the heat a little bit in the back one. They look like they're not cooking quite fast enough. So I like mine crispy and brown. If you don't like them particularly brown, then you just flip them a little bit earlier. Let's see. Oh yeah. Whoop. That's splattered a little bit. And we have sour cream, and we have smoked salmon, and we have red caviar. Compliments of my granddaughter, Casey, who gets her red caviar from Acme Fish Market in Brooklyn, in Greenpoint.
Oh, nice.
I made a trip to pick it up yesterday.
You didn't tell me that that's why you went to the city.
I did I? We'll cook at a different rate. The one in the back, which is a nice big, all clad, dark, non-stick, is slow baking, slow frying rather, excuse me. Slow frying.
I also find there's a difference between an electric cooktop and a gas cooktop, the rate of the cooking.
Yep.
I've had both, so.
I'm going to get a plate.
And also, if you have propane gas, it's so much harder to cook with.
So as they're done, we have a few that are done. Take them out. Now I could put them on paper towel to soak them, which is probably a good idea, which I think I'm going to do. And then I'm going to slide them in the oven, keep them warm. So these did not get as brown as I like, so I'm going to turn them over again. That might be a sacrilege, but not in my family. If they're not quite right, keep them
You
in.
won't tell anyone.
Okay. We have a baking pan in the oven. With a rack. And I'm just going to slide these off the paper towel. So they'll be ready for whoever comes to get them tonight.
Oh, good.
I know Henry's going to be guarding them, but
You had to get by me first.
he's easy. Oh yeah, getting good and brown. So what I'd like to just show you is on the table, we've got some, whoops. We've got some applesauce,
Oh,
sour cream, smoked salmon, little red caviar. And in about 20 minutes, Henry and I are going to take those out of the oven. And that's dinner.
And
Henry, you are a lucky man.
You noticed.
Yes.